Hello, my name is Ken Binkley. I'm here today to begin a little short series on how to letter a race car. The first thing a person has to have is a good subject, and certainly I've got a good subject here with this 1950 model, the car that ran back in the 50s, excuse me. This is 1934 Chevrolet that ran back in the 40s and 50s and on up into the 60s. I think some parts of the country, they're still running these. First thing you have to do is make yourself a pattern. When you're working with a nostalgic situation like this is, you need a pattern to go by to get everything as authentic as possible. I could probably letter it freehand, but it just wouldn't look like it should look. We had pictures to go by. I made patterns from those pictures, and now I'm pouncing it on through little holes that we burned in that paper. And now you'll have to watch very carefully. You can't see the little holes with your naked eye right now, but they're there. I got little blue powdered chalk there on the car, and now I'm going to begin to letter. This is number 20 quill that I'm using. A lot of people use fill-in brushes to fill in the vacant areas as they go, but this number being as small as it is, there's no sense in me using a fill-in brush to fill it in. So I just made a stroke at it, kind of a test stroke. I always kind of pat my brush out on the subject first, and now I'm pulling those strokes down, and you notice I'm going with this 5. This car number, of course, is number 53. He ran that number all of his racing career and had this old car on his farm up there. Many, many people stopped wanting to buy the old car. They could see it, I think, sitting from the street. Jeff had told me that some guy come by and they asked how much you want for that old car out there. And he said, Johnny told him, you don't have enough money to buy that car. He said, well, make me a price. He said, I'll take $1 million. He said, you're crazy. He said, well, I told you it's not for sale. And so that is very true. These people don't want to get rid of this stuff. The last car I remember lettering was the one I did up for Americana Television back in 2013, and they debuted it in 2014. I've had the privilege over the years of lettering cars for many, many race car drivers. Only one I don't know for sure that I didn't letter is one for Cuckoo Marlin. I don't think I ever lettered one of his cars, but just about everybody else, I've lettered their cars. There's several other sign painters around that lettered cars, and I would travel all over this state just lettering cars, even clone up into Kentucky. I lettered Darrell Waltrop's first race car when he came to Nashville to run an old 58 Ford. Brought it over and behind my daddy's house, and I went right out in the alley there and lettered that car for him. And he had a sponsor at that time. I can't remember exactly who it was, but the sponsor was with him, and the sponsor paid me the money to letter it. Now we've got years and years and years down the road. This particular car right here, I lettered in, I believe, is in 1962. I'm not sure, but I know that they were still running these cars at the fairground on Saturday night on the quarter mile when I lettered this car for Johnny. I went out on Murfreesboro Road out there where he lived and where he had his shop in the back of the house. I lettered that car, and just exactly what you're seeing now is what I did to it. I'll put these red 53s on there, and I'll come back with a white outline around it. You notice I'm not being too particular about the strokes I'm making, and I'm just trying to make it as close I can to what I want before I move on to the black. I'll put both numbers on both sides of the car first, and hopefully by the time I get all the black lettering on, the red will be set up enough that I can come back and put this white outline around it. I've always loved to do this. Is my passion. At one time, it was all I wanted to do was paint signs, and of course I was in the music business then. And I would sing in nightclubs at night and paint signs during the day. I painted every sign around that racetrack for many years out there. Clean on up till, I guess to 1968 or something like that. From 62 to 68, I painted just about every sign on the wall there was out there. Mr. Donahoe hired me to do that, and it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had in my life. Sometimes we had thermometers with us to see how hot that racetrack got inside that metal fence. One time it got up to 135 degrees inside that racetrack. And you talking about hot, that was hot, especially with the humidity we got. You'll notice now that sometimes my lips are moving, but I'm not saying anything, because during the time we was doing this, I had several fans running around there to kind of keep me as cool as possible, but it also ruined the audio. So that's the reason I went back to redo this audio and get it as clean as I can. I'm doing this on another track, and hopefully I can mix the track with the video and make it come out right. That's what my hope is. Now, I've just about finished the 3, and now I'm probably going to be moving to the other side of the car here in just a few minutes and get that side done. In fact, I'm moving around there now. Same process. I come back and I put the pounce pattern up there as close as I could to the one on the other side. Of course, you're always going to make a boo-boo. I mean, not too many straight lines on these little cars that you can actually measure by, but I got a pretty good eye for something that's straight and something that's crooked. So now we're pouncing on the 53, and I'll get my brush and I'm going to go to lettering this 53 on here. I've got some spectators around there. I've got some dogs, and got Jeff and his brother. They're watching me. I believe his name is Joe. Joe Tony, he was sitting there, and they're all watching me. And the dogs, of course, they're sometimes they come up and pest you. And I was always afraid they was going to get into the paint, so they're kind of keeping them away from the car. Now you see I'm doing the same exact thing just about as I did on the other side. The reason I don't go the other way, you notice my little finger. That finger is always touching that car when I'm trying to pull a straight line. It didn't touch that time, but you'll notice when I get in, especially into a tight spot, I'll lay that little finger down. Like I said, a lot of people use what they call a maul stick. It's a stick with a little rubber ball on the end of it to kind of help balance. I probably needed one in this particular case, because I'm kind of rusty. It's been several years since I free-handed anything. Now I'm working on this 5, and it's going to come around. You'll see another obstacle down at the bottom there. I can't remember whether I hit that obstacle or not, but there's some bolt heads sticking through there, and it kind of makes it rough when you're trying to go over stuff. I'll shut up here for a minute and kind of let you watch me work. Just being careful now, just to make sure that I get anything that might make a run, I'll try to get that out first. Anything that might look bad, I'll try to make it as smooth as possible. Sometimes you can't because the paint dries so fast. But this particular paint didn't seem to dry all that quick. Like I say, they've taken the lid out of this paint, and it's kind of made it hard to work with. I'm going to finish this 53 up here, then I'll get my black. I'll always, on my lettering, since I guess in the mid-60s on up, I always used a piece of tape, top and the bottom of the lettering. As you'll see me use tape in just a few minutes, you'll see me strip the tape, top and bottom of the lettering, or sometime even when there's going to be a long stripe. I'm not a striping artist by any means. I'm a sign painter, and that's all I've ever been. Now I'm going to begin the 3 now, using almost identical strokes that I used on the other side. I bring that around just where I can get an alignment down just so far there. And I'm going to go back, make sure everything's smooth right there. And I'm going to go back and probably cap off, I'm going to go all the way around this time with that 3 on the outside. I don't normally do that. I don't know why I did it this time. I got to keep my little finger out of that wet paint. I'm kind of freewheeling that this time for some reason or another. I don't normally do that. I normally got that little finger leaning up against the car. I guess that's what's called a Binkley maul stick. You'll notice now I'm just about going to complete the outline of that 3 before I fill it in. I'm making this video for a couple of reasons. A lot of people have never, ever seen this done. A lot of people have never seen a man sit down and paint letters. A lot of the guys around the racetrack have seen it many times, because back before the advent of the decals and the graphics, it's all on the way it was done. I made a few decals here and there to put on the cars. Kip McCoy used to make a lot of numbers out of decals. It's just because it's simply easier, that's all. You'll notice now that I about got this 3 whipped, and in just a few minutes we'll be switching over to our black paint to start doing lettering that probably it'll take quite a bit more time than what we have had to spend on this lettering here. Even though these letters are a lot bigger, the other ones takes a little bit more control. Now we're gonna get ready now to move up there to that door, and I'll put on a pattern there. This is an old car that had a hot rod that they'd made up down there, and in Jeff's garage, and boy, that was a beautiful little car. It's got the glasses in it, and air conditioning, everything else. It's just a pretty little street rod. Of course, it's painted to Johnny Tony yellow, just like all of Johnny's cars were. Now we're going to put the pattern on and begin to letter our door. Now you'll notice I'm going to strip this tape. Pull the tape out and pull along the top of my letters there. I go all the way down, stripping off the tape, being careful not to rub any of my pattern off. Tape is kind of tough, but I'll do that top of the letter. Now I'll have the bottom of the letter using 3/4 inch tape here, and it's a little wider than what I normally use, but for some reason or other I just picked up the wrong rolls of tape. Now all year round letters drop below the line and above the line. So when I run across a round letter in here, a lot of times I just leave it gapped there. But a lot of times also I'll come back and finish out the letter. It'll have a square bottom on it. A round letter will have a square bottom, square top. So I just take my brush and round them off after I've finished up just about the whole sign. Tape was so tough I had to start using a knife there. But I'm going on down here now, and I'm getting it all lined up. I've already pounced my pattern on, which didn't show up on the video, which is okay. But I've got to get it all lined up like I want it before I ever get started lettering. I'm going to shut up a few more seconds now. Let's help me get this tape on here, and I'll go back to yakking again. The sign I'm getting ready to put on here was Southern Generator Service. This was Johnny Tony's dad or his granddad, I can't remember exactly, but he started this Southern Generator Service, and it lasted a little while, and I think there just wasn't enough business there, so they closed it down. And he worked for another company instead. He went back into auto parts business after he had shut the generator business down. Now I've got my tape on there now. I'm going to grab I may have to do another strip of tape down there where it says service. Maybe I got all three of them on there. It looks like I have. But now I'm going to get my black paint. I'm going to start lettering. You know, my old arms are kind of beat up. I get out here in the yard and doing things probably I shouldn't even do at my age, and out there changing lawnmower blades. But my brother is 85 years old, and he still builds racing motors. He'll build any kind of engine. He'll tackle anything. His name is Roy, and he'll do just about anything. He loves to work with his hands, always has. He was a big part in the Binkley racing family, a big part. For years, he was the man that built the bodies of the cars. But then, and Ray, my another brother, was the engine builder. That was Gary Binkley's dad, and I don't know how many people remember Gary that ran at the fairground, but that was Gary Binkley's dad, Ray. Roy, of course, and that's Roy Binkley's dad that won so many races in two different divisions out there. Well, in fact, in three different divisions. They had limited sportsmen that ran, and he won 16 out of 20 features one year with that, and it switched over to a truck. He ran many, many races. He's accredited, I imagine, with winning 150 to 200 races here in Huntsville and several other places where he ran. Gary won a bunch of races too. Of course, the one that most people remember is Charlie. Charlie was one of the most flamboyant drivers that ever raced at that speedway. He was always there just punching. He didn't win as many races as it sounded like he won in the late models. He started the late models out there. He started with a 55 Chevrolet. But he started originally running a 1949 Ford to begin with. And he ran about a half a season with that. And my brother Roy seen that that thing was so dangerous. He decided to build a car. And he built a 1946 Ford. Had a little flathead engine in it. And that little thing would really get on with it. Everywhere he went, he won with that car. He won some 80 features out at the Nashville Speedway with it. He won, I think it was about 35 or 40 in Huntsville. Then he ran a bunch of them in Birmingham. And everywhere where they could, they'd run that little Ford. Then he switched over to the 55 Chevrolet in the early 64 and began to race there. Right off the bat, he came out winning. First night he spun the car around, and it wasn't even painted or anything. He spun out. And then from then on, it was Katie bar the door. He ran that little 55 Chevrolet all over the South. And every time people see him coming, they knew they had some competition. Because, boy, he could really drive that car. It had a little 327 Chevrolet engine in it. And nobody could believe that that car ran as good as it did with almost a stock engine in it. Then, of course, we got Gary. Gary came along in the mid-70s and started racing, along with Roy. Roy began to race some. And then Leroy. Roy won a bunch of races. Gary won a lot of races. Here in Nashville and all over the South, Gary won races. And Roy did too. Leroy basically stayed at the fairground and ran, and of course then he ran some at the Highland Rim, a little short track up in Ridgetop, and they all was winners, every one of them. But of course, like I say, Charlie's going to be the one that remembered the most, and even though Roy was just as good a driver as he would ever be, Roy always was very, very gentle on the equipment. He had that little truck, the little light blue truck. He ran that in the 1997 season, won 16 out of 20 races with it. Now back to Johnny Tony. Johnny was a go-getter. That man he was a master at building things, things that a lot of people didn't even have on their cars. He would put on them. As you'll notice that this car here, you got the rivets down the doors. Most people just weld them in a few places and and go to racing. But Johnny, that wasn't good enough for Johnny. He riveted those doors. He had to go behind that piece of sheet metal right beside that 5 and put a splint in there that he could run those rivets to. I guarantee you one thing, none of his cars ever came apart. He built the last car that Bob Ruther would run. He built the Devil Woman car for Marty Robbins back in the early 60s. And Marty ran that old car, never ever had anything to fall off of it. Because when Johnny built them, they stayed built. And we're working on these black letters here. We'll probably do most of that in just a few minutes. At one time, it would take me about an hour to leather this car. Because I was just super fast at that time. Of course, like I say, I'm rusty now. Good Lord, it's been several years now since I've even picked up a brush. Unless I just to show my grandkids what Papa could do, you know. I did show them with my brushes. Now every time they come to my shop, they want to pick up their brush and they want to paint with my brushes. Of course, I don't like to do that because these brushes now are very, very expensive. That brush I got in my hand right there was probably a $20 brush. I remember back when I was going gung-ho in lettering, that brush would probably be about $3.